And the other thing that around the causes of the obesity, that as far as among Aboriginal peoples in Canada, we've just started talking about in the last 10 years, is the impact of our personal attitude, our levels of stress, and how we look at life, and how that impacts on the things that we do, that brings us to a way of life, and how we look at things and address things. And so what happens overall is that we become out of balance. Living out of balance equals unwellness. And here the diabetes is the measure of that. I'm going to give you a little bit of a history of North America, or a history of Canada lesson very briefly here, to put this more in a more of chronology and facts. What we do know from written records of the missionaries that came to North America, whether they were the Dominicans and Franciscans in the southern Western Hemisphere, or it was the Jesuits coming across Canada with the fur traders in the 1600s, that the Indigenous peoples whom they came across were people who were in perfect health. They were in physically excellent shape. They didn't have disease. They didn't have illness. The Jesuit even write about the Iroquois, the Haudenosaunee people of the Longhouse, my people. They don't even have police and prisons. These people have a perfect society. And remember that these people are writing from a European perspective, where they were coming out of whatever wars were going on from the 15th century, 16th, and 17th centuries in Europe. And everybody was looking for utopia and the ideal societies. And they found it when they came to North and South America, and they recorded that. So we had a time where our people ate well, were physically active, were physically fit, that there was peace at all levels of life. When, in my language, when we say skana, when we greet people, when we say skana go gan, we're saying is all good with you. And we're not just meaning, are you having a nice day? Skana isn't just, you know, peace out, baby. It's, I'll show you how old I am. Peace means about, are you, inside you, is everything good? Is all parts of your body and being good? Are you connected with spirit? Is your human part connected with your spirit part? Is everything okay around you? That's what that one little word means. All of that comes together. And that's what the peoples had. And that was documented. Now, we have that documented in our oral traditions. We don't have the names of authors or journals to refer to on that. We say that because our grandmothers told us, because their grandmothers told them, and it went back that way. But we do then also have the backup of the European missionaries who recorded these pieces of information. But from the time of colonization, when contact happened, things started to go awry. The first thing that happened, we know, was the smallpox. And while smallpox came in like boom, within a few days, you're turning around and, you know, half your community is dead. You know, I kind of think of that TV show that was on a few months ago there. Everybody went zombie overnight, right? You know, it was, we were using that analogy back on the res. We were talking about diabetes and things like, yeah, everybody turned zombie overnight kind of thing with the smallpox. Just wipe people out. Now, we look at that event and take that and say, okay, yeah, man, that must have really sucked. But put yourself in the position that when you go home tonight and you wake up tomorrow morning and you walk out your door and you're feeling fine, but then you look all around you and there are dead people all over the place. All of a sudden, in your house, maybe you live in a house of 5 or 6 or 7 people, you wake up in the morning and 4 of those people are sick and dead or dying. And you go outside and there's people laying in the street. And you go to the bus stop where you lined up with 50 people in the queue to get on the bus, and there's maybe 5 or 6 people that are standing there. And others are lying dead, and others are dying. Freak out, right? Freak out. When we study that in history, oh yeah, smallpox wiped out the populations, we kind of then move on to the next section. But I think we need to take that moment and reflect on what the heck happened and the impact that that had. because the people then immediately turned to their medicines. The roots, the bark, whatever it was that people used, whether it was the Ogunsa or what we call Hadui or the medicine people that wear the mask, and their work, their spiritual work, doesn't work. They themselves are dying. As they would recall with the Aztecs and Mayans, they prayed to the gods and the gods abandoned the people. There's going to be a short circuit. You just look on September 11, 2001 and what happened in New York City and the impact that that had on New York City, on the United States, and on the world. It shook the hell out of the world. I still got friends in New York. We were just down there a few months ago when we went to the World Trade Center site. And it was totally emotional, and there's still people walking around there stunned. So we take something like a different people coming in and bringing a disease in unintentionally, although there are instances where later it was used in germ warfare by Lord Jeffrey Amherst in particular. You can tell him I said that. That causes a disruption. And when the traditional teachings and ways don't work anymore, the missionaries were there to say, well, because you don't follow Jesus, you don't follow the cross. And I'm not trying to knock Christianity, I'm not knocking the religion. I am knocking the missionary aspect and how things were used and misused to advance personal causes. I'm not knocking the religion. I'm a recovering Catholic myself. Okay? And this has an impact on people that goes into the conscience of the people of the time and then carries down over generations. You call that multi-generational trauma. And that's the first instance of it. There's more that carries on from the 1600s right down to 1990, Oka crisis in Kahnawake, Gustafson Lake, the lobster wars out west, the unsolved murders of Aboriginal women in Canada. You have these traumatic instances that impact on people, that impact on a society, and raises the stress of people and causes people to act differently than the ways that they were used to. Okay. Also that comes along with colonization is the different concept worldviews of land ownership and control. And the Western view of land ownership is to own it, hold it, control it, and use it, as opposed to an indigenous worldview, which is that owning the land is as silly as saying I own this air or I own this water. It's not there because it's part of a circle of life, and there's equality around all of that. So you have this clash of worldviews, and it causes then this disruption. You add onto that a system of economics. You bring in guns, technology. You bring in alcohol. And these things come in and go amongst the people. And what happens over time is you begin to have a change in the eating and in the activity of the people. But first you have that change of a mindset that begins to happen. We then experience from the colonial government era right through to the creation of Canada, okay, and up into contemporary times, the dehumanizing of Indigenous peoples in Canada to becoming wards of the Crown. You know, good old Queen Elizabeth over there, she's my grandmother according to the eyes of the Indian Act. And where I live is in land that she's given permission for me to live. It's a reserve. That's where it comes from. The apartheid system of South Africa copied the Canadian system of reserves. How many of you knew that one? You can use that one on Jeopardy one day, okay? They copied that apartheid system in South Africa from the reservation system in Canada. And so what happens then is that people become displaced, people become wards of government, people are not able to any longer gather foods, hunt, fish, etc. Okay? So I lay out this history for you. That's what we don't really study and learn in the book. And even here, I'm just giving you a little snapshot. I teach a course in education back at McGill University for new teachers, and we go into this in depth and spend a unit in talking to understand how things have happened and how that impacts, because it impacts on us today. Excuse me. And so, by the time we come to the 20th century, can I get some water, please? Yeah. Thanks. So when we come into the 20th century times, we have Aboriginal or Indigenous peoples living on reserve. We have foods displaced, and the traditional foods are replaced with foods that are high in starch. Flour, sugar, salt. Okay, all these things that are used because what does that do? It fills the belly. It fills the belly. Today, when there's disasters, natural disaster, and they're dropping food into people, what are they dropping in there? They're dropping in flour, rice, things to feed people quickly. And so, sorry about that. No, she's gonna get me some water. I'll be okay. And so we see the big change in eating. We also see, as we come into the latter part of the 20th century, the change in lifestyle. Now, I have to remember as a Mohawk man, as a Ganyankahaga, that in a traditional society, my main functions were to go out and hunt food and to go out and protect. So we're traveling, we're on the road. That meant that the women stayed at the village and that they had responsibilities of growing the fields, taking care of that, which meant that of turning over the fields and planting and taking care of that. They took care of the village as they take care of the house. So there's a balance of responsibilities, and both of which are very physical. You may either have experienced firsthand, depending where you grew up, or your mom or grandparents or great-grandparents, of that people who were always preparing food. Mama got up in the morning and was cutting wood, hauling water, making the breakfast, doing the laundry, preparing lunch. It was a physical existence for everybody. With the advent of technology, of tools, of computerized things, we become more sedentary. So therefore, things change. Also in this change is this unhappiness of being under thumb of government, of being oppressed in society. Racism, blatant racism comes about. The stunning incident, the stunning event that takes place in 19th century Canada, which was picked up from south of the border, from the United States, and their practice was the residential school. The setting up of residential schools to make the Indian into the white man's image. Go, thank you.